good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I am your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and I have my good friend here, award-winning film director Scott Slone. Scott, how you doing today, my friend?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing well. I know we had talked about, right before we got recording here about, what I've seen you do with this big time movie that you guys keep stacking just awards on, individual awards as well as the collective awards for the film Malibu Horror Story. So yeah, I wanted to bring you on to chat with with my followers, with the listeners, and not only talk about the movie, but just kind of give them a background about kind of how where you started and the journey that has kind of got you where you are today. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, and I know a lot of the followers and listeners are going to get a lot of value from what you have to say today.
I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I know you had mentioned you're up in Big Bear, doing some work out there, and a lot of stuff in the works right now. But before we get into all that, talk to me about like your experience in film and kind of how your journey got started and what kind of inspired you to be a film director.
So it was in high school, somewhere around my sophomore year. I was a pretty big basketball player, and that looked like the path. Going to college to play basketball was the path. And I was going to school in Florida, and I had transferred to a private school in South Carolina. And somewhere on my sophomore year, we had a high school video project, and my teacher, Miss Webster, took notice of it and said, "Hey, I think you got some talent here. This is better than most." And she's been doing it for like 10, 20 years or whatever she's been doing this thing for. And so she got me a visit to a set of a movie called The Forces of Nature with Sandra Bullock and Ben Affleck. And so I went out there, kind of got a little feel with this location scout on how the movie was being shot. I got very interested, and I started talking to him about, how easy is it to get a job on movies? And he said, "Well, you're very lucky. In South Carolina, a lot of big movies come through your town, through your area, within like a 2-hour radius." Sure. And so I said, "Okay, cool. I'll check it out." And I contacted the film commission, and I got my first job on a TV show called Dawson's Creek. That was a Warner Brothers show from back in the day. It was a huge show, actually. Like younger people, younger people might not know about it, but yeah, exactly.
With like Seventh Heaven, all those shows, yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Buffy the Vampire Slayer was around, a little bit. Maybe Buffy was, yeah. So, again, I was a junior in high school, just kind of driving 2 hours to Wilmington, North Carolina, to just soak up as much as I could. And I'm at the bottom of the totem pole, getting people coffee. Sure. Walking some of the actors to their trailer and back. I'm just doing the bottom work and just kind of learning the ropes. And then I got another job on a movie called O, which was shot in Charleston, South Carolina. It starred Julia Stiles, Josh Hartnett, and Mekhi Phifer. On that movie, I kind of just told him I'd do whatever it took just to work as many days as I could. Not only was it good money for a junior in high school, but I was very intrigued, very interested. And so I was a PA on that. And I also was Josh Hartnett's stand-in for a while. And I also played basketball in the movie, believe it or not.
Nice.
So, and I did not want to be on the camera. I absolutely hate being in front of the camera. So, but it was a good learning experience. I got to be on set almost every single day for almost a month straight. And after that, there was a couple other big ones, a movie called Cold Mountain, won like 11 Oscars or something like that. I got to work on that. And on that one, I got to step up. I got to direct background action, which is essentially all the actors you see in the background of a big battle scene. They all have to do something, and they all kind of need a coordinator. So there's a bunch of kind of coordinators out there helping them out. So that was my first taste of kind of getting a group of people and being able to direct them to a degree. Anthony Minghella is a big Oscar-winning director. So, I mean, it definitely was a good experience for me. And then aside from that, it was just my only real job was working at video stores. I worked at like 7 different Blockbuster videos. So, for me,
it's a lot of this younger generation that won't even know what Blockbuster is. And that's a shame. Like, they don't have that Friday night Blockbuster run
right.
in a movie, get some popcorn and a Coke or something and just hang out, So Yeah, so definitely Google. If you don't know what Blockbuster is, Google Blockbuster, and it's gonna blow your mind. So
Yeah,
sorry, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, that's absolutely accurate. I mean, sleepovers when you're like in sixth grade, like,
Yeah,
your friend's mom would take you all to the video store and you get like, candy and the movies and just watch movies all night and drink soda and stuff. I mean, that was my childhood basically.
absolutely.
So yeah, working at those stores was kind of like my film school. I maybe worked at a Blockbuster, like I said, like I worked at one in South Carolina, in Florida, and in Los Angeles. And I would say that was basically my film school. So that kind of got me just really into making movies and wanting to make movies at least. And I wrote my first short film called Old Man Music. And then a year later, I think I was like 20, I think it was 21. A year later, we ended up getting Jeffrey Lewis, was a really big actor, to play the lead role. And then kind of the whole movie just came together. And back then you had to shoot on film. So it was very expensive, very difficult. There was no digital cameras. There was no smartphones. There was no, Canon cameras or anything like that. So, it was definitely, um, a lot harder to do stuff back there. You really struggled, and you really had to grind to get something that you could show somebody, because there, unless you use like your mom's handy cam, like a Sony camcorder, there wasn't really anything you could do unless you shot on film. So it took a while after that. And then, basically, that film, went on to win a bunch of awards in the festival circuit around 2005. And then since then, I've just been kind of, I've done music videos, a lot of movies, but right now it's just been feature films for the last like 10 years. I mean, this particular film is 10 years in the making. So it's been it's been quite the journey.
Yeah. No, I've definitely heard, and we've had a guest on the show, Ricardo Gonzalez, who's one of the producers on the movie, and you kind of talked about his perspective on, like, seeing what you guys were able to do and all the stuff that you guys had to go through to get to where you are today. So like, talk to me. Let's go deeper into the Malibu Horror Story. So first, I know, and this is something that I didn't really touch on with Ricardo, but talk to me about, is Malibu Horror Story, is that like a true story, or is that fictional?
It's fictional. I mean, there's parts of the story that are pulled from factual things, like, the Dawes Act. There are certain things that happened in this country a long time ago that are absolutely true. So a lot of things were pulled from that, particularly in the Malibu to Santa Barbara area. I spent a lot of time doing research early on, going up to the Painted Caves in Santa Barbara and stuff, and just really, really kind of trying to figure out, uh, you know, if there was something there that was cool and, interesting. And I guess over time it just started getting less true. We started making it more of a movie essentially. I think it started off as like a lot more factual, and I think over time it started to become more of a movie.
Hmm.
And I mean, definitely different than the very first version that we shot in 2010,
Hmm.
where that movie had very little to do with the history of Malibu or the caves.
Oh wow.
So it definitely, I would say that over I would say that over the year, I think Siri is going crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I would say that over the time period that we started early on, especially with Rick. Rick was the first person that came onto the project. I've known Rick since about 2009, 2010. So he came on first early on. We wanted to make a fun movie. Paranormal Activity had came out,
Yeah.
and we wanted to make like a fun movie, cheap, easy, and quick.
Sure.
And we very quickly realized that that was not going to be the case as it got bigger. When more people come on board, everything gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's
Mhm.
really nothing that can stop that. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, so, it definitely was, for us at least, the journey early on was definitely a different journey than it has been for the last, say, 5 years, where the movie's kind of grown its own legs and kind of out of both me and Rick's control. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it's definitely been, like I said, a process in trying to figure out the how to market the film when it comes to the truths, because early on we had fake Facebook pages. As you know it, we use KTLA, we use the real news people. So if you live in LA, a lot of the stuff you're going to see, you're going to be like, man, this must be true because it just looks so
Yeah,
real. Yeah.
that's why I asked, because I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, oh shoot! I mean, and it's not too far fetched either. I mean, I'm thinking about these caves and seeing all this stuff go down, and that's why, whether you told me it was real or there's some fact to it, I would have totally believed you. And because especially when you saw KTLA, which is a big time news station over here, the local station, and just kind of seeing how it all transpired. And I just from the viewer's point of view, it brought so much more substance to it, and which made it so much more like realistic. And like those kind of, because I love horror movies, but the horror movies that bring like just such like a realism factor to it, those are what really get me going. Like the blood and gore movies are awesome too, but that's why I love like the Paranormal Activity kind of movies, and like Blair Witch, all that stuff, and like The Conjuring, stuff that kind of like puts you in that moment, like Malibu Horror Story did. That definitely like got me going, and that's what I really loved about your movie there, and how it has that realistic feeling to it. And yeah, I mean, and all the actors did a great job of it as well. But I'm sure along that journey you had, all the ups and downs to kind of piece everything together, and kind of grew into what we have today, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, just time shaped this film. Like, this is not the film that I set out to make in 2010. This movie got a lot bigger, lot bigger than we ever thought. I mean, Paranormal Activity, those movies. I mean, I think Paranormal Activity was shot for 15K, something like that. I mean, that's the running rumor. But I mean, there's a like I said, a certain point when you can see the potential in a movie and you go out and try to make it a little bit better. And then, we did a test audience at the Regal Cinemas in Long Beach, and we had an extremely diverse crowd, all ages. And we literally had every single one of them fill out massive forms to tell us every last little thing they liked and did not like about the film. And so, one major thing that was brought up was, hey, we've seen guys run around the woods with flashlights a whole bunch. We're over that. And so I said, well, let's think of something that, like, could be, cooler than the woods. And I was like, yeah, they're right, the woods is oversaturated. I've seen a million movies before. And then I started thinking about the cave, and I was like, man, I haven't seen that many cave movies, and caves are
Yeah.
scary, claustrophobic, people are
Oh yeah.
claustrophobic, you can do a lot of things. So that was a major shift from how much we showed people in the woods. Like, we have a lot of footage of like them running around the woods, getting scared, like scary stuff from the woods, but it's not in the film anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, this film probably could be 3 or 4 hours long. It's 85 minutes long right now. And it's
Yeah.
basically, it's as tight as it's going to be. And that's because a million people helped shape this film, audience members, people who gave their opinions. You pay these big companies a lot of money to really break down your film and tell you, hey, this is working and this isn't, and you try to get it to a point. And I feel like now we have it to a point where it's appealing to most audience members who like horror films.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point too. And I remember one thing that I remember thinking when I was watching the movie, was like, I can't imagine. I mean, whether this, and I still didn't know at the time whether the movie was fictional, semi-fictional, or not. Um, just even filming it in that kind of environment. So like, talk to me about that. Talk to me like about like being in these caves, in the middle of the night, being in the woods. I mean, talk to me about that experience. Does it give you the creeps at all, or I mean, it might differ depending on the person, or tell me about that experience when you're actually filming from
I
your point
mean,
of view.
yeah. So if I ever had a moment to just relax and take it all in, I would say it was creepy. But when these are, working on films is a grueling experience. You're 16 to 18-hour days. I think the way it's portrayed in the movies, when you see the big movies and the big movie directors, they're sitting in chairs. They look very clean. They, like, some of them got suits on and stuff. Major movies might do it that way, but independent movies, you're down and dirty. You're in the trenches, and you're
Sure.
extremely tired. You're delirious. You're working 5 to 6 straight days, 16 to 18 hours, and then you're going home and watching all the footage back. So you're not getting to sleep till 5 in the morning, and then you got to be back on set at 8 a.m. So it's you don't really have time to get, scared by the atmosphere.
Sure.
But I can say the difficult process is the amount of stuff in the cave, dealing with, I mean, there's a couple times I thought I was gonna have a panic attack in the cave, just because you're inhaling, the dirt's being kicked up. You've got, 100 people in a cave, a small cave. And, not only is the dirt being kicked up by everybody who walks in and walks out, but we're also sweeping the dirt to kick it up in the air so it looks better on camera.
Sure.
Um, so you're getting a lot of dirt in your nose and your mouth, and it's the it's hard to put the camera. I mean, I'm 6'3", but like the cave roof is maybe 6 feet, you know what I mean? So it's there's a lot of areas where you have to deal with that. But yeah, I mean, the caves were phenomenal for how well it looks in the movie. I'm very proud of how good the caves look in the movie. One is a real cave, the Bat Cave, the original Bat Cave, the Adam West Batman, right
Oh,
below the Hollywood sign in Bronson Canyon. That is a cave that anyone can use or anyone can go to if you're in the Hollywood area and you want to hike up to the Hollywood sign. Instead of going over to the Hollywood sign where the dog park is, go over to Bronson Canyon and you will see this Bat Cave. A lot of movies have used this. And then the other cave is way out in Santa Clarita where it's 120 degrees.
oh,
And that is on a movie ranch. And that cave was built for a TV show called Weeds. And that cave, over the years, we've built onto that cave and we've used it and we made it kind of windy and we painted all the symbols on it and stuff. So both are drastically different to shoot at. But, in my opinion, it's making a movie's hard. It's grueling. It's tough. It is not, it is not what is portrayed in the movies. I can tell you that.
sure. So like I know, you know, like that day to day kind of thing might look different for you. Like, but so talk to me about, and you can use Malibu Horror Story as an example or other pieces you've worked on in the past. But like, talk to me. I know you talked about the different, hours and the hours of like being on set as well as being at home. But are there any other challenges that you or maybe your colleagues go through that are pretty common in the field?
I mean, you know, there's three stages of making a movie. One is pre-production, one is principal photography, and one is post-production. So pre-production is the most stressful part of production. It is when you're getting the budget together, you're finding out, all your props, you're hiring all your crew, your key crew, you're finding the locations, you're basically getting everything together to actually make the movie. That part is extremely stressful. It's just as many hours, but you get to do it all from home. Nowadays, with technologies like Zoom and stuff, it's a lot, and people are just so familiar with it. It's getting easier because you don't have to all gather at one location, and you can also hire people outside of LA. That's been fairly nice to be. There's a lot of talented people out there. They're not all in LA. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
pre-production's its own beast. Principal photography again is my favorite because we're actually shooting the movie, but definitely difficult. And I would say probably the most grueling part. And then post-production is where you find out if you have a movie or not. Those hours in post-production are very, very late hours. So like my hours right now are going somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m. in the morning and getting back to things somewhere around 9:30, 10 a.m. in the
Mm.
morning. So and that's because I'm kind of in the middle of wrapping one up, doing a festival run and starting a new one. So it's each part of the filmmaking process has its own set of challenges. And I think, depending on what part of the business you want to get into, each one's different in its own regard. I mean, if you're just a writer, you can, I've always wanted, the Queen Mary in Long Beach. So
Hmm.
I've always wanted to just, I've stayed at the Queen Mary a million times. I've done all their haunted tours. But I've always wanted to rent a room out on the Queen Mary for like 2 months and just write my next movie. Right now, I can't afford that kind of time right now. But, to me, writers can do that. And like, you don't have a clock, right? There's no such thing as Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday or a clock. You're just when your story's over, your story's over. So there's that part of the business as well. But as far as being a director, you're kind of in charge. You have to be in touch and in charge of every element of the film from pre-production to the final delivery and post-production. So producers as well have to do the same thing. They get a little bit of time off during principal photography if they've done their job right in pre-production. But aside from that, it's an all hands on deck all the time kind of experience.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that insight too. And like speaking of Queen Mary, I mean, I have not seen any movies about the Queen Mary, and I've seen some stuff. I have a couple of buddies that work there, give me a couple of tours, and I tell people you don't have to go during the Halloween time to do that little Halloween haunt to get a little freaked out if you're into that. To go stay there. And are they still letting people stay there these days?
Unfortunately, right now, I believe they're renovating.
Okay.
So up to about a year or two ago, they were, and they were
Yeah.
doing the 3 a.m. tours, the random Tuesday night 3 a.m. tours. When there's only like 6 of you. That's when it's
Yeah.
the scariest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've been to a whole lot of haunted places across the country. We spent a lot of time in New Orleans for prepping on one project, and I can tell you that Queen Mary is probably the closest I've been to a paranormal encounter.
Really.
Yeah, definitely. Queen Mary is where it's at. I mean, I when it's a packed ship and it's kind of a party and you're up in the bar or whatever, it doesn't have the scary feel. But if you go on a random Tuesday when it's like $59 to book a room and then you pay for that like 3 a.m. tour,
Yeah.
it gets really scary because there's no one on the ship, basically.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're renovating it right now or something.
Got
Something's
it.
happening to it right now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I hope you make something from the Queen Mary. I know you just kind of throw it out there, but I'll be the first one there because yeah, I've seen some stuff. I've seen pictures that the workers have sent to each other in videos, and I've always said like, man, like why doesn't someone make a movie about this? Because it will definitely, especially like the locals in there who know about the Queen Mary who've been there. Yeah, so but speaking about the pre-production now, I've had people in the past, who want to get into the film industry, and those who want to be, like in front of the cameras. So, what is it that, from your perspective, what is it that you look for when you're trying to find those good fits for your films?
For casting
Yeah,
actors.
for casting actors,
Yeah.
yes.
So for me, it all depends. So if I hang out with you, like if me and you just hung out one night, all night long, maybe we hit a bar or a club or did something where I could see personality come out, I'll know the very next day, like what I could see you doing in a film. So I'm a personable person where I can kind of gauge off someone's characteristics, how good they would be in a certain type of role. And then there's a
Sure.
different type of actor, which is like that can kind of do the wide range of actors. So, for me, I tend to watch actors' reels, other projects they've done. If they are brand new, for instance, say let's take Malibu Horror Story as a good example. We have two sets of characters here. We have four young kids from the 2012 tape that end up going missing. And then we have four paranormal investigators that go looking for those 2012 kids that went missing. Well, the four original kids, that was a kind of like what we used to say back in the day, kind of like an American Idol casting call or a mall casting call, whatever it was, when you'd hear the story, oh, this kid got discovered in a mall, right? Or something like that, right? Got commercial or, so
Yeah.
basically we brought in just hundreds of kids to an audition in Burbank. And I was looking for certain fits and certain feels. So for instance, Hector Gomez, who plays Carlos Garcia in the film, he reminded me of like a lot of my friends. So for me, growing up kind of as a late teenager, early 20s in LA, he just I just could see a lot in him. And so for me, he was a pretty easy choice. And Vino had never done any acting before, and either did I think Tommy or Jacob. I think all three of them had never done acting before. So it was really about chemistry tests with them, bringing them all together, having them all kind of improvise. There was a lot of improvising early on. And improvising would be when you're making a found footage film like this. Improvising is the biggest characteristic you look in these certain actors. But if I'm going to give you a broad generalization of the industry, just because I've been in it so long, and I have worked at a casting place before as well. it's not all about the talent. Sometimes it's about the look, because cocky directors can think that they can pull the talent out of you, and that can be true a lot of times. But sometimes you could be the best actor but just not have the exact look. And the
Yeah.
look always is like, I tell people with tattoos all the time, I said, hey, if you go in for a certain role and it's a tough guy, show your tattoos. If you go in
Yeah.
for a role and it's not a tough guy, hide those tattoos, because instantly that's just something people connect with, right? They see tattoos, they think, oh, this guy must be tough, right?
Sure.
I got
Yeah.
a million tattoos, I'm not the toughest guy in the world, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like I can definitely tell you that you per project there's certain things you're looking for, but the casting process is a long process. And if you have a casting director who's good, they will usually, for instance, with this, the 4 new characters, um, we went through a casting process, and we ended up actually casting friends or friends of friends. So Dylan was on Teen Wolf, but he was a friend of Robert Bailey's, and Roberts was a friend of Valentina's, and Valentina was a friend of mine, and Rebecca was a friend of Valentina. So we all kind of had already hung out before. So, in this particular case, I needed people I could trust and I was comfortable with and that I could count on. Where maybe hiring somebody off the street you don't know so well, maybe he doesn't show up to set on time, or maybe he's not going to go the extra mile for you, because, technically all these actors did me a gigantic favor on this film. They, especially the 4 original kids, I mean, they've been coming and doing shoots for me for this film for over I would say a 6 to 8 year period. I mean, when I first had them, if you look at the film, I threw in a particular shot of them, and I think I called it freshman year footage. I mean, that's when I had them. I mean, Carlos's character had no tattoos in that, and then when you see him 2 years later, he's just covered in tattoos, because I think I had him when he was like 19. And then when I reshot him, I think he was 21. And, some of their voices were even a little bit different, I mean, and their personalities were different because they were younger kids. And,
Sure.
but they were good actors, and they, even though they hadn't done much, they proved that for this movie, they were the right fit. And, over the years, as the movie has shaped and kind of turned into what it is, I'm even more happier about the choices I've made for casting.
Yeah, that's awesome, because a lot of people don't really know how that goes down as far as casting goes. They see the talent on screen, and you might have people, whether they're from California or not, who are like, I want to do that, but how do I do that? And so, like, what would be your best advice for people who want to break in, whether it's on-screen talent, whether it's in film, I mean, as far as like in your case, a director, or I mean, I'm sure there's key differences there, but like, can you share some advice you would give for people who want to break into that?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know, 20 years ago, I would say you had to have an agent, meaning the first goal was to get an agent. So back in the day, it's like you had to live in New York or LA. You had to go into every single agency. You had to have a headshot, and you had to grind it out like everybody else did and first get an agent. And then once you got an agent, that agent was able to get you auditions. And then if you did good in those auditions, you'd book a job, and then you were on your way. Nowadays, because of just the internet in general and the way things have shifted, you can do self-tape via Zoom now. So you could be in Kansas and do a Zoom self-tape for something. Also, filmmakers, production companies, they're much more open now. It's no longer just about the casting directors and just about the agents. They're putting out open calls on websites. Mandy.com, there's a couple of them that they're putting out calls. Now, I'm not going to sit here and vouch for any of these things, because there
Sure.
has been, I'm not going to say, oh, get a job off Craigslist. You know what I mean? I'm not going to tell you that, but
Yeah.
there's easier ways to do things. I mean, back in the day, it was a newspaper that you would buy in LA in like the early 2000s called Backstage West, and you'd buy it and you'd go, oh, it's just like the penny saver or something that have job ads in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You go, oh, this movie's casting and this movie's casting. But what I tell a lot of people is, extra work and featured extra work. Our studio, they do a lot of shows there, and I get to see hundreds of extras all the time. And a lot of times I'll see friends, and it's a good way to kind of break into the business by doing extra work. It's decent pay, and you get a kind of good feeling of how sets are ran. And you can get discovered that way, and you could get thrown a line or two. But then there's the unions. SAG-AFTRA is a big union. They're a major power player. If you were to get a line in a film and you were to become a member of SAG-AFTRA, like, again, that's another thing to look into. It's a, it's definitely a job and it's a struggle, and you've got to get used to rejection. You can't just go on your first audition and go, oh, I didn't get the part, I'm done acting, I quit. You've literally, you can ask any actor, the one thing that they've learned to deal with is rejection. 100, 200, thousands of rejections to say, man, I really wanted that part. And then the worst thing is you get to see that movie come out and go, man, that could have been me. I
Yeah.
auditioned for that. But if you, again, staying with things and being, determined to and not giving up is the key. So many people I've known have moved out here to LA. They want to do this, and then within a year or two they give up and they go back home. And that's the story of LA. And it's like, you got to stick with these things pretty much to the wheels fall off, to death. You know what I mean? You got to just keep, if it's what you really want to do and be passionate about it. A lot of people, it'd be nice to be famous, it'd be nice to be in a movie, but I mean, if you're passionate about the craft of acting, you can make it work for yourself. But you just have to know that it's a struggle, it's hard. And I mean, it's something where you got to have thick skin to this business is a cruel business, you know what I mean? And so, for me, I just say, if you really want to do it, you can do it, but you just got to know you really want to do it, because you've really got to put in the work. And again, practicing your craft, going to acting class, getting an acting teacher, things like that. It's hard to practice acting on your own. You can't really flex your muscles by yourself. You got to go out there and work it out. So
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that insight too, because yeah, again, there's a lot of people, and that's why I like to do these things. That's why I like to bring people like you on, just to kind of share that insight that you might not get, or you can try to Google certain things, but coming from, the expression says the horse's mouth, direct from the horse's mouth is one thing. Now, what about the people who want to be behind the camera, right? People who want to be producers or directors. Eventually that just starts somewhere, just like you did. All right. So like, what are some of the differences? I mean, in addition to what you spoke about, for those who want to be in front of the camera, what are some key differences as far as wanting to do that, get experience in that?
I would say, uh, again, things have changed since I was coming up. I couldn't, if I wanted to go out and shoot something, I had to use like my mom's VHS camera or Sony
Yeah.
Handycam. Sony Handycam was what I really grew up with. There's that small little guy. I took that little tape.
Yeah.
Went out and recently bought one, because I still think that's a really cool look.
Yeah.
Now it's like a retro cool look, but back then it wasn't the coolest look back then. But so, nowadays you can get a high end camera very affordable. You can, I mean, these iPhones now are just absolutely incredible. You can shoot, movies. I mean, movies are being made on iPhones. There's 3 or 4 movies that came out to the theaters that were entirely shot on iPhones.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the accessibility is a lot easier today. So, first and foremost, I would say that you can kind of cut out film school nowadays. I mean, I really do think this. I think that you can kind of skip over film school. You don't need to pay. I don't know how much money is for film school, but I mean, you know, you can just educate yourself by buying a camera, a microphone. This stuff is all affordable now. Back in the day, if I told you buy a camera, buy a microphone, buy a camera light, you'd be like, the hell with you, dude. That's too expensive. I can't do that. But now it's
Yeah.
it's so affordable. It's so cheap. You can get high-end 4K cameras for just a couple $100. And like I said, your smartphone can do it. So I would personally say start writing or coming up with stories on your own and start shooting them and putting pieces together, because that's the way you're going to kind of slowly educate yourself on how to put something together. Learn editing. When I was coming up, again, editing systems, computers were not that great. So now computers are just amazing. I mean, I tell people, and especially Adobe, most young people, I mean, we live in this Adobe atmosphere. We either know how to use Photoshop or Premiere or something like that. And so, the Creative Cloud is a great thing to have. And that's all the tools you need for post-production. So if you have a camera, a microphone, and, a computer that has the Adobe Creative Cloud on it, for like a monthly subscription fee or something like that, then you're all set to make a movie. There's no stopping you from making a movie nowadays. There's nothing that can stop you. Before, someone had to read your script, tell you if it was good or not. They made the decision if you were eligible enough to make a movie. The money really determined, the studios determined, the old system determined what was made and what's not. Not anymore. Nowadays, all you got to have is a camera, a good idea, a passion for storytelling, and again, the determination to just see it through, to not give up, and to go out there and make a movie. And you can do that. And if your movie's good enough, it can get into some film festivals. And if it gets into some film festivals, it'll get some exposure. People will see it, and it'll get picked up. And next thing you know, you could be, have a movie on Netflix or Hulu or in the movie theater. And it didn't really take much except effort. Then that's the cool thing about today. You don't need $1 million. You don't need a rich set of parents. You don't need that.
Yeah. No, that's great. And thank you so much for sharing that, because there's so much that I'm sure that you've gone through, individually throughout your journey to where you are. And I mean, definitely times have changed. I mean, I had no clue that these films, like some films even making to the big screen, were being shot on iPhones, because like you think of, because you see like movies that maybe they're movies of like movies being made, right? And they have the stereotypical director and the C, right, saying action and all that stuff, and the cameras, all that. But like, now with the technology, right, with the technology that we have today, things have changed, right? And whether it's people trying to break in to be in front or behind the camera, it's always good to see like where things like and how things have evolved over time, because someone who is brand new to the industry and someone who wants to just do something to break in, they're going to have no clue, right? Their knowledge about how to break in or what they've heard in the past might be a little outdated, right? And so that's why I have to ask these kind of questions, because things change, like times change, and even the film industry alone. So
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, I would say that the biggest thing that I can tell people is that, growing up in the 90s, I got to experience both. Yes, I had internet. Yes, I had all these things, but it was the beginning of stuff. So you kind of had to be an early adapter. And so most of the industry books, I mean, I can take you back to when I was 14 years old. When I would Google, how to make a movie, how to break into the movie business, there wasn't a lot of Google searches for that. So I had to buy books. I had to go to the bookstore and buy a book and read a book, which is something I have not done in like 20 years, right? Like, so it's getting to see both sides of it. I saw the tail end of kind of no technology as a young child, but I grew up with mostly technology. I'm an early adapter. Anything new that comes out, I want to buy it. I want to see what it's like. I keep my ear to the street. So I definitely know, what the pulse is nowadays, but I can definitely tell you that the way it was earlier, that way of doing things is over. Younger people who know that, hey, this is the new, this is the way it's going to be going forward, they are absolutely correct. The old ways are dying, are dead. And I would say that, at least the way I look at things is that, it's just so much more accessible for people, especially the way the prices dropped. I always say it to a big screen TV. When I was a kid growing up, like one kid in the neighborhood had a big screen TV, right? Like the richest kid, and it was a huge TV. And you're like, oh man, he's got the big screen. You go over there and watch football or whatever. Nowadays, everybody got a big screen TV. It's just not that. Things are just affordable now, and it's just times have changed. And like the old way of doing things is over. It's a new breed out there.
Absolutely. And that's why when I talk to like clients or students I've had in the past, because I grew up around the same time as you did, if I'm not mistaken. And I grew up with the internet being slowly introduced, and having the AOL dial-up internet, and having to tell your parents, oh, mom, don't go on the phone, I have to use the internet.
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah. That sound you would hear when you picked it up, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, all the chat rooms and the original like instant messaging, and
Oh yeah.
like all these
AIM, right? It was AIM, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. AOL Instant Messenger was like, and then like the coolest thing you could do is like make your font a certain color, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna be red or I'm gonna be blue today, and that was about it. But it was.
And just seeing that progression, even like MySpace. I remember on like to this day, it blows my mind. I was talking to a buddy about this too, of how like people who had a MySpace page and who really got into it, you're like doing coding to like put a certain song on a picture, a profile, like background. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I don't remember like how to do it. I just remember I found out how to do it, and I had to put a certain coding and all this stuff.
Hmm.
I'm like, it blows my mind that I was able to do that. And so many other people were doing it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, look at it today. It's like, man, it's like,
Yeah.
and so, but again, that goes back to how you mentioned before about adapting, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I think that generation, like, just kind of were able to like see all that, all the technology and whether it's computers, introduction of the cell phones, all
Hmm.
this stuff kind of evolve,
Yeah.
and how it's, I think there's a certain appreciation versus someone who like is born into this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like the norm, you know?
Yep, you're correct. I mean, just to touch back on the acting thing, for instance, if you wanted to be an actor right now and you're like, man, I live in Kansas, no one knows who I am. What you were talking about with MySpace, that I think it was called HTML. We were basically building HTML websites on our own, just all. Well, nowadays anybody can sign up for like a company like Wix, build their own website in like 10 minutes. It's very, very simple. So if you're
Mm.
an actor, you don't need to pay a professional to do your headshot. You've got an iPhone. You can go to your friend and say, hey, get a couple shots of my face. I'll put on some makeup. I'll do the lights properly. You can get your headshot. You can go build a website on Wix. And then you can say, well, I don't have any work. Well, take my iPhone. Let's go out and shoot some monologues. Let's go out and shoot some scenes from some movies. And then you could have your own little reel. All that is based off technology. And you could do all that in one day for a very, very cheap price. Again, it just takes effort. You just have to
Yeah.
have the effort and the drive to want to do these things. And it's so easy today. That's why sometimes when I see people being a little bit lazy today, I'm like, man, you got no reason to be lazy. It's easy today.
Yeah, trust me, I'm right there with you, man. Sometimes I have to bite my lips and just like, you know what, let them be. They don't know any better. I'll try to teach them, right?
Yeah.
Try to make them more aware,
Yeah.
but like patience. I have to tell myself patience. They don't know any better, and
Hmm.
yeah, and yeah, because it just, there's so many things that I'm sure you and I have both seen as far as even like, using a typewriter, like if you want to versus a computer, or, before the laptops started coming, all these things that, it's, again, it's an appreciation of stuff that, it's no fault of their own as far as the newer generation, just like that doesn't have. So they're more savvy to this stuff. They're coming into this like and seeing all these people getting TikTok famous, right?
Hmm.
And whereas before, like for me growing up, like that wasn't a thing, right? I
Hmm.
mean, you had to be lucky to get like noticed, or in those right place, right time. But literally today, you can go on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, right? And people are just getting famous off and going viral. And that's how these things go. And that's these newer generation. They have the leg up because they understand, all this stuff. And like seeing that from my perspective of like kind of seeing how the progression of all this stuff and how it is today, it's a different perspective and it's a different appreciation. But at the end of the day, that's why, I appreciate you sharing your insight and seeing and talking about how the stuff has evolved into what we see today.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, this generation, I can tell you hands down, is a more talented generation than the previous generations. The question is like, what's the effort level like? You know what I mean? Because when you have
Sure.
a lot of things handed to you, you think it's fairly easy. Or if you lean too much on technology, right? For technology to do most of the job for you, you can get complacent. You know what I mean? So to me,
Sure.
it's like, it's just about, again, I just have to say it again, effort, just putting in that effort, that nonstop effort, because TikTok famous is only going to get you so far, right? It might get you an
Sure.
endorsement deal, but let's just talk about Vine. Vine was only a couple of years ago. Snapchat. I
Yeah.
mean, these things are just falling by the wayside. I mean, Facebook is now like, I don't even know what's going to happen with Facebook, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
like every day something new is going to happen. So you can't just keep getting famous on each platform. You got to figure out how to use that to your advantage and make a career out of it, because a year or two of income ain't going to power you for your whole life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So last thing I want to mention too is, so coming back to Malibu Horror Story, it's been phenomenal, seeing the progression and seeing, the success you guys have achieved globally. I mean, I just, within the US, you're taking and seeing people watch your movie and seeing all the awards, and again, all the different individual and group awards as far as the film goes. So like, what's your next goal like for this movie? Like, where do you ideally would want to see it go?
So I think for right now, I mean, when we started off doing festivals, it was kind of a trial run. We started off pretty late. We started off this past October, I don't know, 7 months ago, and we were just testing the waters out. We were, when you finally get a movie finished, we had done some test audience screenings. Um, and we had got a lot of data on the film, and we felt that the film was pretty strong at this point. Also, had been so long, we were like, let's just put it out there and see what people think. And so
Yeah.
the first festival was Horror Fest in St. George, Utah, and it won Scariest Film. And then it was also that same night in Orlando at Spooky Empire, won Best Picture there, and then it also won Best Feature in Atlanta. And so we were like, okay, this is people clearly like this movie so far. Let's ramp it up a little bit. So we submitted to some more festivals. Then we got into those and we started winning a lot more awards. And we're like, okay, you know what? Let's just let this thing full, just like let it go on its own. Let's just put it out there full blown. So we are, I don't know, 7 months deep into the festival run. I think the goal would be somewhere around the horror season, ending our festival run. That would be about a year. Your average film spends a year in festivals. To give people a perspective here, Paranormal Activity came out in the movie theater around Halloween 2009. I was living in Alhambra at the time, and I went and saw it at this theater that no longer exists. And I remember thinking to myself, "Oh, this is going to be a big wave." But I thought it came out of nowhere. That is incorrect. From 2007 to 2009, Paranormal Activity went through the festival circuit almost 2 years and
Oh
really
wow.
struggled to gain recognition. And a lot of people can't remember this because I tell people this, as someone who's 18 right now was 5 years old when Paranormal Activity came out. So not everybody knows this film, but the impact it had, especially on Malibu Horror Story, the style of filmmaking that spawns from the Blair Witch Project, which is like the Godfather, right? So for found
Yeah.
footage, Blair
Yeah.
Witch is the Godfather. And so, to me, when I look at a lot of these films, I say, okay, each one had their own struggles and their own promotional period. So we're probably looking at maybe four more, 5 more months max of film festivals. And then somewhere around first quarter of 2023, getting out in theaters. Don't know how many, probably a limited amount of theaters in limited cities, but getting out in theaters somewhere around that first quarter of 2023. And then falling down to streaming somewhere right after that, and so on and so forth. So I have a lot of people that hit me up constantly on where they can see the film. Unfortunately, right now it's just at film festivals. So hopefully a film festival will come to your city. We have a lot more film festivals coming up. There'll be a lot more screenings of this movie in the next couple of months, but hopefully the masses can see it somewhere around the first quarter of 2023. That'd be January, February, March of 2023. Hopefully either at your local theater or on a streaming service.
Yeah. Yeah, because I get people because after seeing it, when I went to the film festival in North Hollywood, I was just like, man, and being a horror film buff myself, I'm just like telling people like, you guys, I don't know where and when the next film festival is going to be. And hopefully it makes it to the big screen sometime soon because I want you guys to see this movie. And I'm not just saying that because I know a couple people who work on it, but it's a damn good movie. And I remember leaving that theater, I was like, wow, like that was good. And and so that's why I'm looking forward to seeing this continue to grow. So if people wanted to get more information about Malibu Horror Story, what would be the best way to find that?
Yeah, I would say the Malibu Horror Story Instagram account at Malibu Horror Story Movie, or the website www.malibuhorrorstory.com. Both of those constantly stay up to date with the upcoming festivals, ticket links, and awards and stuff. So both of those are pretty up to date on both. So if you're looking, so for example, if you're in the LA area, we're going to be playing a couple festivals coming up this month, and those will be on there, and you'll be able to see, what date, what time, what theater, and so on and so forth. So I would say the Instagram account and the website.
Awesome. Well, my friend, I appreciate you taking the time out to give us some great insight about what you've done throughout your journey and just kind of how people can break in whether they want to be in front of the camera or not, and about your award-winning Malibu Horror Story movie that is just phenomenal. And especially if you're a horror movie buff like myself and yourself, it's something that you definitely got to check out. And so, especially if you're in the LA area or wherever you are, go follow that Instagram, go to the website, give them a follow, show them some love, and keep track of that, and go take a look. And I guarantee you, if you don't like the movie, I'll pay for your ticket. I'll whatever you got to do. Okay. I guarantee you're going to love that movie. Okay. So again, thank you so much, Scott, for taking the time out. And I appreciate you sharing your great insight today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. It's been a blast.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening in. We'll see you guys on the next one. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you.